Hi guys, thanks once again for tuning into one of my tutorials. Today I want to talk to you about making an electric guitar prop for one of your puppets. I've posted a separate video showing me playing a song with a guitar that I've made, but I just wanted to go through the process so that if anyone wants to make one, they can do. So let's get started. Right, first of all you need to find a guitar or a picture of guitar. This one here is one that I got off of Google. All I did was Google electric guitar line art or electric guitar picture, whatever you want to do. Go to the images tab and you'll come up with lots of pictures like this, various different shapes and sizes. Now ideally what you want is the line art version, not necessarily the full colour version, but either will do, but obviously this uses just a little bit more ink. Okay, so now once you've got that, you need to scale up the image. Now, if you go into any normal sort of picture editing program, something like Microsoft Paint or GIMP or Photoshop or whatever you happen to have, you can scale up the image to what you want. Now, I found that for my puppets, that what I need to do was scale this to twice the length of what it was. It may be that you need to do something slightly different. I will give the dimensions in the description below as to what I've achieved and how I did things. But like I say, doubling up in size worked right for me. Okay, now that did span 2 bits of A4 paper, which I then had to tape together, and I essentially cut out the outline. Now I then put the outline of the picture on top of a piece of MDF, and this is what I ended up with once I'd cut it out. Okay, so this is 6mm thick. It's just normal MDF, medium density fiberboard. You could just do a cardboard template, and that's entirely up to you, but the reason I did an MDF is because once I've cut it I could always sand it and make it nice and smooth, but also I knew that it would last a lot longer if I wanted to do multiple copies. Okay, so this is what I ended up with, and like I say, this is effectively twice the size of the one I had originally. Okay, if you can see that sort of clearly enough. Now you may have to experiment with the size of what you do, but you know, this is a pretty good starting point if you're using one of the normal sort of rod arm puppets. And again, I'll give details below as to exactly what's what with that. So now obviously you've got your template. The next thing you want to do is actually transfer that onto what it is you're going to make the guitar out of. Now again, I decided to make mine out of MDF. The reason being that MDF doesn't warp, it doesn't bend, it's fairly light and it's easy to paint. So that's what I went with, but this time instead of the thinner MDF I went for 12mm thick MDF, and this is one that I've kind of finished off. It's a little bit bright there, but hopefully you can see it. So it's 12mm thick on that dimension, and what I did was essentially, when I did the picture, once I'd finished tracing around the main shape, I cut out things like the fretboard and some of the smaller detailing, laid them on, drew round them so that I had a mark of where they were, and then I could paint this as well. I did an undercoat paint of white just to seal it in, and then I used acrylic paints to actually give the finish on here, because they're quite nice bright paints, they're easy to apply and they give a nice finish. And then on top of the paint, what I did do was I did a couple of spray coats of clear lacquer. Now on this particular guitar, and the other one that I'll show you in a minute, I only did all the detailing on one side, but that does mean that you can only use the guitar this way round. So if you're a left-handed puppeteer like I am, you can obviously use the guitar normally, but if you effectively turn the guitar around, you can see that that's the back of the guitar there, and that doesn't actually do anything. So what I would recommend if you were to make this, and for future if I was to make any more, I would do the detailing on both sides, so you effectively do a reverse of that on that side. Now the way I finished this off as well, just because I'm a bit like that, is I used some pop rivets just along here on the base of the strings, and again along the top there, because they're nice and shiny and they look quite smart. And then I actually used fishing wire for the strings in between. Now from a distance, you can probably see it on the video, but if you imagine when you're quite a way back, if you're behind a puppet theatre for example, you can't really see the strings very well. So personally, I would recommend you just add a thin marker and drew the strings on, but whether you do that or do them like I have is entirely up to you. The only downside of doing it this way is you do run the risk of when you're using your puppet that you can catch them on the strings there. But essentially that's it, there's not a lot else to it. This is just some ribbon that I got from a local fabric shop, and all I've done is I've used a small screw and a screw cup just in the top there and along the back there, and just screwed it on so that it holds that on as well. Okay, so that's a nice bright yellow one I've done. And here is another one that I've done for one of the puppets that I've made, which is this guy here. Ooh, I'll bring him down a little bit, but again, this is exactly the same principle, but it's only done on one side, but it's quite nice to be able to use for doing whatever it is you're doing, like that. Okay, now on this particular puppet, he does have posable fingers because he's the one that I made, and as a result of that I was able to kind of put his hand around. But what I do normally is I have a piece of, or an elastic band going round, and quite often if it wasn't posable fingers like I have there, I would just put the elastic band round one of the fingers, or probably the ring finger, so it looks like from a distance he's just wearing a ring, but it stops the hand from falling down. So if you don't have posable fingers, that would be the way to do it. Now, because of the way the hand goes round here, that naturally gives a support at this particular end, and then this end where you've got your strumming hand, you can literally just do like that. Okay, if you're using a rod arm puppet where you would attach this with an elastic band, you would be better to put this rod on the outside and put the band on the inside, because otherwise you run the risk of scratching your guitar. But for this instance, because it goes up through the centre of the hand or the centre of the wrist, it's not an issue for me. The only other thing with this is I've made this long enough, this strap, so that I can put it over his head without having to squash it on or anything, because obviously you don't want to damage your puppet or anything. But on the back I have a plastic clip. So if I take the clip off, this is the clip. It's basically just a plastic bag clip that you use for putting bags in the freezer, clip them up before you put them in. So that's quite handy. And then all you do on your strap, you pinch the strap up and then clip it on, and then that way it lifts the guitar to the point that you want, so that otherwise you can see the guitar's quite low down there, and if your puppet can't reach to strum it, it's not going to work particularly well. But sometimes, you know, it may do or may not depending on your puppet, but that's kind of what works for me. Okay, so that's essentially how that's made. Have a look at the video of this guy playing along to a song. It's a song ideally for more than one puppet, so I've kind of winged it a little bit, and it's been a long time since I've done it, so it's not perfect, but it'll give you an idea of how this looks when it's being used. I hope that's been helpful to you. Leave some comments, positive or negative. Give a thumbs up if you like it, and if you like my channel, please subscribe. Thank you.